Thank you for having me back on. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
So yeah, Newsletter Hero is something that I actually use quite a lot to make my newsletters from podcasts like these. So um, it, it takes video, transcribes it, and then puts it into a nice email for you kind of automatically. And it takes a lot of time out of the process of creating these newsletters. And I guess I'm interested in two different aspects about Newsletter Hero. One is newsletters in general, like why would someone need a newsletter? Why is it useful? What are different types of people who would want one, and how do they benefit from it? And the other is, what was your role in creating Newsletter Hero? What are some problems that you've faced? How did you solve them? And maybe some problems you're working on now?
Yeah, so let's start at a really high level. So, why did I want to even pursue creating a newsletter platform like this? So, I think the world is changing very rapidly with AI. I also think that we're seeing this massive boom in content creation, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's via podcast, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, any of these types of things. What happens when you produce content on any of these platforms is that you effectively don't own it. You're posting it on YouTube. YouTube owns that content and they're your distribution channel. So you could get banned. A lot of things could happen. You could fall out of favor with the algorithm, whatever it might be. And if you lose your connection with that platform, you effectively lose your entire audience. You might have hedges, you might have it across multiple platforms, but from what I've seen and from what I've experienced making a lot of content, the only way to truly own the connection with your audience is via a newsletter or a mailing list. That is something that you have their emails, you can connect with them at any time. That is one of the tightest relationships that you can have and the most consistent relationships you can have with an audience. So I thought newsletters were something that over the course of the next 5, 10 years are something that is not going to change. People are going to continue to want to have them. And they're also going to map the trajectory of any of the other social platforms that are out. So any new social platform that comes out, you're still probably going to want to have a newsletter to have that direct connection with your audience. So to me, that's the large thesis of, hey, like newsletters are something that are continuing to grow. They're tracking the same trajectory as all of the other social media platforms. Also, less people are building in the newsletter space. It's really sexy to build a app or a tool for YouTube or Instagram or X. Those are very popular things. Do I directly want to compete with people who are producing in that space at really high volumes, really high competition? Personally, no. I think it's better to have a product that I think will be around for a long time, that I can also that doesn't have to compete with as many other products. So that's like the big picture. Why do I think newsletters are really important? I also am building based on my own experiences. So I've had plenty of I've had a decent sized YouTube channel. I have had done quite a few podcasts. And something that I really struggled with was being consistent with a newsletter. I was really good at the one vertical of video production, and then trying to stay consistent, trying to hire someone who could turn my content into newsletters in my voice. It was just very challenging, and I never really liked the results that I got. So the goal with Newsletter Hero is really self-serving. How do I take the content that I produce, maintain my voice, and produce something that is really high quality that I can connect with my audience? For a podcaster, to me, it's a no-brainer to have a newsletter. It's additional feedback loop to either push your podcast, push additional insights, promote anything that you're trying to do. It just creates this secondary touch point with anyone that you connect with. So the selfish side of that is, hey, I made this product for myself. I use it for my newsletter, The Exponential Athlete, as well. I either take parts of my podcast and turn it into newsletters, or I'll take something I'm researching and consolidate all the stuff and turn it into a newsletter there. Once we get to who this tool is for, it starts to get kind of fun and exciting. So the main target market of this tool is someone who already is producing content, and the just burden of turning this content into a newsletter, the bar is just a little too high. So for some people, they have to learn an entirely new style of content when they're transferring something into a newsletter. We take care of that with some really good prompting. If you already have a newsletter, we help you, and you can basically train the new newsletter on your old newsletters. So it's exactly in your voice. It does a very good job of style matching. And to me, that's the biggest value add. This is also a great tool for someone who is new to newsletters. They want to start growing their audience. It could even be your first touch point. Like you could start a newsletter on Substack or any of these platforms that have discoverability. I think we do a really good job at being able to consolidate information and turn it into a newsletter based on whatever template that you set. So I don't have to use my own content. I can aggregate 4 or 5 different pieces of content and turn that into a newsletter as well. So really the two markets we're focusing on, the initial most salient market for us is content creators who aren't capitalizing on their newsletter game yet. And then secondarily, we have the ability to serve people that don't have anything related to content yet, and you can aggregate and create new, really novel content. What a lot of people don't realize is how lucrative newsletters can be. So if you hit that 1,000, 2,000 newsletter subscriber threshold, depending on your niche, you can actually get really solid, high quality sponsorships that have direct contact with your that are directly aligned with sort of the core proposition of your newsletter, and it's great for advertisers. I can't think of like a YouTube channel that has exited for a ton of money. There have been some that sell to private equity. I think like Veritasium, for example, is one. But Morning Brew sold for $75 million, I think, within 10 years of starting. Like newsletters don't have to be directly related to your face and likeness. They can be topical. And because of that, they can be run more like a business than a lot of the traditional traditional marketing channels or traditional social media channels. And I think that it's good to diversify and hedge yourself by having a newsletter for that use case as well.
Could we back up there? So you said mentioned if you have 1,000 to 2,000 subscribers for your newsletter, you can get some pretty solid brand endorsement deals. So like, could we put, I guess like, what would you expect to make for a brand endorsement for an audience of that size?
That size, it really depends by the niche your newsletter is in. So, for example, in AI or in finance, you're probably going to be getting more money. I would say anywhere from like 50 to $500. Again, depending on the stickiness of your audience. If you're making like a humor newsletter, it's probably not going to be as sticky. If you're making a trading newsletter or something along those lines that's very high quality, you can probably get something closer to that $500 range. You can also, again, if you have really good trust with your audience and their products that you like and use, you can use affiliates and things like that, and get essentially a sale every time, or a cut of any sale that anyone buys through your platform.
Yeah. So how does a newsletter differ from just email marketing in general? Because there's another type of, I guess, email marketing where you kind of just like uh, frequently show up in your customers or your target's inbox with information about why they should buy something. I guess like yeah, for my mind, I'm a little bit confused about how a newsletter fits in with when you actually have some sort of offer that you're launching and you write emails like getting people ready, saying like, hey, this is something I'm offering, it's coming soon. Hey, this is my offer. Hey, don't miss out. Like, there's a different type of emailing that's kind of more annoying and direct, and then the newsletter is kind of like more entertaining.
Well, I would say the newsletter is creating value in and of itself, independent of a product that you have, right? So there is a Venn diagram, right, where, hey, newsletter and then email marketing, there is some crossover. Usually newsletters, in the traditional sense of the word, you're telling them something, they're tuning in to get some sort of useful information from you. So a newsletter can be an aggregation of the latest AI trends. It can be a blog type piece. One of my friends has a really cool newsletter called Stat Significant, where he uses data to basically describe some pop culture phenomenon, and it's a really interesting read. I think he does it once a month. If For example, like myself, I do my newsletter, and every week I basically have an insight from studying elite professional athletes And it's essentially a way to level up your game, whether it's in sports or in a more professional setting. While I do that every week and I continue to do that, I also have just recently written my book and I plug that at the end. So it's like, hey, if you really want to hone into this specific type of performance improvement, which is visualization, you can check that out. So that would be in the middle of that Venn diagram. So newsletters can be a really great distribution channel if you are eventually going to sell something, but people aren't tuning into your newsletter because you're selling something for the most part. That's the main difference between those two things is email marketing is or like more traditional email marketing is reminders to buy my product or like something unique about it. Whereas again, the newsletter side sits as its own entity. It's something that people will go to or would hopefully like to read independent of if you were selling anything.
Yeah, so it's more similar to content and email marketing, I guess, is a separate thing. But um, I guess I think that the two could be combined. I'm not sure if that is ideal. Like, for example, when you have a book that you're launching, like having a few newsletters that are kind of just like around the topics of your book. And then that way your readers are kind of like primed for when you do launch the book and you like plug it in your newsletter. They're like, oh yeah, like I know why I want to read that book. Um, I guess that's I think that that would be a pretty cool strategy, but it takes a lot of planning and foresight, I suppose.
Well, so it does and it doesn't. I mean, I think that one of the reasons why many people want to cultivate an audience is because if they believe that they're going to create something valuable in the future, they have a built-in market for that. So I didn't necessarily realize this when I was making content to begin with, but is it easier to build a product and then develop an audience, or is it easier to develop an audience and then create a product that like very specifically caters to that audience? I think the world is moving or it's more effective to move towards the latter, where you're cultivating this audience that really trusts you, they think you're bringing value to their life, and then naturally, hey, I've created a product that I think will create even more value in your life. That's a pretty natural progression, and that's how I generally prefer to do business. I mean, that's something I'm working towards as well. Is hey, how do I create products for myself? How do I share about them? How do I essentially show people what I'm working on, show that it's legitimate. That's all part of building a brand and building an audience. And then if people like what I'm producing, if they think it could create value for them, they're natural buyers as well. So I think that if we're looking to hedge ourselves for the future, if we're looking to uh, you know get the most out of the time we put in, it's really valuable to create honest to goodness value for people, not necessarily with the mind of hey, I'm gonna like find a way to monetize this later, but still leaving that door open of saying hey, like okay, I have this great audience, I want to continue creating value for them. Hey, what if I like invested a lot more time and created something and then like that'd probably be natural to justify that with some cost. I mean, the goal is to never produce anything for your audience that isn't creating more value than it costs. I think that that's a pitfall a lot of people fall into. I mean, you look at crypto coins and scams and those types of things. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with having an audience and building something specifically for them that can create a ton of value in their life. I mean, that's basically the onus of the book that I created is okay, I have a reasonable sized group of people that are very interested in improving their sports performance. I've learned a lot of things along the way and like man, I'm going to do a really deep dive. The deep dive into the guided imagery, motor imagery, visualization, it took away from a lot of other things that I was doing, a lot of like things that I could effectively make money on. Why don't I produce something that's good enough that people would be willing to buy? And like for the most part, audiences don't get upset about that if they feel like they're getting something that is really worth it.
For me, I found personally that um, it gets complicated when you're building an audience around a topic of your interest, and then you decide you want to build something for them, and you realize that it's like a completely different skill set, and then you have to keep talking about the topic while you're doing something else, and you're not maybe diving into that same topic anymore. So it doesn't come as naturally to you because you're trying to learn how to do something else, which is to build that product for them. And then it's just like it gets confusing. Um, I've and also having the awareness to know to really pick your topic and see where you fit in. I guess really what I want to speak on is um oh man, I forgot. I don't know how to really articulate it, but it gets kind of like confusing in there. For me, I'm kind of earlier, much earlier in the building an audience than you, and I guess like something that happens is you have to pivot what you talk about, what your niche is, what topic of interest you want to create around, and whenever you pivot, you maybe leave behind the audience that you built somewhat, or you have to try to connect what you're interested in now to what you were interested in before. Um, yeah.
Are you familiar with like the 1,000 true fans concept?
So I think the idea is that you have a very small amount of people that you actually need to support you.
Yeah, yeah. Effectively, like if you have 1,000 fans and they each pay you $100 a year, like true fans, and they each pay you $100 a year. That's $100,000 for something that you produce, right? And so you can have this huge audience that you carry around with you because they're interested like topically in what you're talking about. But there's also going to be some set of that audience that's really just interested in what you're producing, right? And there's like tiers of interest in people. Like there's some subset of people that are like, "Hey, I'm interested in what Ken's doing no matter what he does." And like those are the ones that you want to cultivate and keep along. And like no matter what you do, if you really enjoy doing it, if you're making valuable information around it, there's some subset of people that will follow you along as far as you go. I mean, that's honestly one of the reasons. What you're describing is something I really struggled with as I sort of transitioned away from making data science content. I Yes, I still work in data science. I'm out of touch with someone entering the field right now. There isn't a really large audience for people who are kind of like mid-level career in data science. And so it really isn't authentic for me to make content around that space where I'm not as immersed in it as I was before. I'm frankly not as interested in it as I was before. So do I continue to make content and try to make courses and stuff around it? I mean, honestly, no. I've made some courses in the past when I was in the thick of it, but I've evolved past that. I'm working on other things now. I'm making content around other things now, and that's all you can do is effectively like be authentic to yourself. I mean, making a bunch of content around something that you're not passionate about is a disservice both to yourself and to the audience. And so, yes, I will probably get dramatically less viewership on the new things that I produce, but over time, you get to build that audience. You get to evolve into whatever it's going to be. I mean, if I look at my own journey, there's two things that really have interested me for a long time. And so the first is sports performance. I've been interested in that ever since I was a kid when I picked up my first baseball bat and wanted to get better, right? That's a thread that I'm continuing to pull on in my life every day. I love reading books. I'm still making the podcast, anything along those lines. The other one is entrepreneurship. So even broader than entrepreneurship is independence and freedom. Those are things that actually my dad ingrained in me when I was a kid. So my dad was an oral surgeon. He owned his own practice, and he was always like, "Hey, you like want to own your own thing. You want to be able to like have the freedom to go watch your kid's baseball game. You want to have that ability to do those things." And so if I follow either of those tenets, I don't think those are going to change throughout the rest of my life. I mean, whether I'm getting freedom through data science content, whether I'm getting freedom from entrepreneurship related content or like building a software company or any of these types of things, those are still common threads that run through all of those. And it isn't too much of a deviation to just continue on those paths. So I would say, hey, what is above just the content you're making? Like, what's the broader vision for the value you want to create, or what is your guiding light in your life? And try to make content that is related to that. Because you can, I mean, like all the content I made in the past, it was still on the broader vision of what I'm trying to describe. It's not like, oh, I've lost my way. It's more, oh, like that wasn't exactly right for where I want to go. Let's readjust. And it doesn't have to be this huge quantum shift. It can just be this little tweaks over time. I mean, almost every other big YouTuber I know has made some iterations like that to find where they are.
Yeah, that was really well put. I think the fact that you have the um, idea of like maybe what the two topics that you're really interested in are, and you use that to relate what you're talking about, even if it's not exactly that, so that you can see how it connects, and you give yourself the space to evolve now, to as you want to or need to, and see that another topic fits you better because it relates more or aligns with your vision for the things that you really are passionate about and your life. So I think that's kind of the key there, having the awareness of what are maybe two, three things that you really aren't going to change, like things that you're passionate about that you see continue on for your entire life. And then allowing yourself to maybe choose two or three topics or one topic that isn't those topics, but you see the connection.
Exactly.
Because I think one thing that plays into it a lot is when you're selecting your niche, like if you select entrepreneurship, but you haven't built a business, it's going to be hard. Or if you're really early in your career, it can be tough. So like you can't maybe choose your ideal niche from the get-go. So you want to choose something more specific, but just having that connection, understanding how it connects for yourself.
Yeah, I probably push back against that a little bit. I mean, even if you haven't built anything, I think the best content tells a story of what you've done, not doesn't really like talk down and give advice, right? So you could start a business and talk about what you're learning as you're going. I think that's really good content. I think that's the type of content that I want to watch. You could make a YouTube channel and talk about what you're learning making a YouTube channel and creating content. That's a lot more authentic content to me than it is like me telling you as like, oh, I have XYZ subscribers, you should do this to do XYZ. Like everyone's circumstance is different. Every individual journey is different. And I think it's a lot better to see case studies than it is to be like told what to do. There are some people that can absolutely do that really well. But I think it's a misnomer that like you don't have experience as a beginner, right? You making content 3 months into a project can be valuable to someone who's just starting. You making content 6 months into a project can be valuable to someone who's 3 months into it. I mean, that's what I did when I was starting my YouTube channel. Like, I made videos about how I approached breaking into data science like 6 months into it. Like, I was coming from management consulting. There wasn't really a roadmap for how to get into that field. But yeah, I was just making content for myself like 3 months ago, right? Or 6 months ago. And I think that that's the most effective way to do it. There, like, it actually like frustrates me. And it's, I think the biggest pitfall of making content right now is like some guy with 100 subscribers and 4 views on his video is telling you how to go viral on YouTube, right? Like like there's a disconnect. But if they're making content about how they're learning to go viral on YouTube, that's a very different story. And those are the stories that I think have the most legs.
I just think that it's one thing to do something and then talk about what you're doing, like to talk about that thing you're doing, and it's another thing to do something different and then talk about that different thing. So like if I were to make a YouTube channel about me growing a YouTube channel, I just feel like there it would be a lot. I don't know. Personally, I rather watch someone who's making a YouTube channel, learning about how to make a YouTube channel by talking about data science.
Sure. I mean, there's also value in that side as well. I mean, like let's take the entrepreneurship example, right? The, which is like, oh, I want to start a business. I'm gonna do 100 days in a row where I talk about what I'm learning and what I'm building, right? That was a little bit more what I had in mind. Is like you're still doing entrepreneurship, like it's still authentic content that like if you between day 70 and day 90 absolutely blow up your business, that's automatic viral potential right there, right? But those first 70 days, like nobody's gonna like poo poo you because you're being inauthentic, if that makes sense. I think what I'm more getting to is that I think you can just start on that path, even if you don't believe you have like the credentials or you don't feel like you've done anything. Because like making content around what you're producing in and of itself is doing something towards that path.
Sure. Yeah. Something interesting about creating content too is that you open yourself up for feedback from others, which I guess can be difficult if you don't like the feedback or if it's a topic that you don't want feedback on. But I don't know, you find yourself wanting to create content around that topic because it gets engagement. That's a struggle with content that I've noticed could be tough. Um, but going back to Newsletter Hero, I'm curious, like, yeah, like I'm not sure if you're more on the marketing side or if you are coding. But I'm curious what you're working on, like what your role is on the team.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. So I've been doing some build in public. I've been talking about the features. I've also been getting a bunch of user feedback, and then am hands on keyboard. We have a couple other great engineers we're working with on this, and they are way better at implementing and building scalable infrastructure than I am. But in terms of prototyping the features, making sure that the use case is right, I'm very involved with building those. So we kind of have a system. A lot of the times they can just build it faster than I could even like vibe code what the feature might look like to demo. But if I want to introduce a new feature, I can just, you know, build it relatively quickly these days, especially with AI. They can get an idea about what that looks like and then integrate it, build it into the product that we currently have.
What about the analytics side? Did you spearhead that more or not so much? Like
Uh,
measuring like the use of your product so you could improve it.
yeah, I mean, exact same thing. Basically, like building some infrastructure around that. Well, not to building some prototyping of that, and then kind of handed it off to them. I think something that I've learned um, is that it's a lot like a lot of the best things in humanity come from working together. And I've always tried to do things myself. And I could do them myself, but I was really limiting myself. It's a lot more effective to have some specialization and to let other people really work at what they're good at and enjoy doing. And why would I want to spend all my time, doing like 4 or 5 activities that I don't love and then only like rationing time to do the things that I do love when I could actually be doing mostly the part of the process that I enjoy and find someone who really loves those other parts of the process. So to me, I frankly I just enjoy coding and engineering a lot less than I used to. I quite more enjoy like the storytelling and building and just talking with people. I've done over like I don't know 250, 300 podcast episodes so far. It's clearly something I enjoy. Why wouldn't I index on those types of things uh and leave some of the other things to other people that love that more and frankly are better at it than I am.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, um, I heard Willie told me that you're gonna be making a YouTube video, I guess kind of maybe about Newsletter Hero for your main channel, which has been dormant for like a little bit.
Yeah, for about a year. So I I realized I did a lot of introspection. I really do like making content. I like storytelling. It's a fun medium for me. I was honestly just burned out around creating content in the data science space. It just didn't feel super authentic to me. Again, data science has been an unbelievable career path for me. I just feel a little bit out of touch with the people who are my core audience at the, you know, still.
Breaking into data science.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just so far kind of past that stage of my life. It doesn't feel right for me to make content about that specifically anymore. I feel the most authentic content to me to make is what I'm excited about right now. And what I'm excited about right now is really building things. You know, I go into this in the video, but I think we have maybe a year and a half, 2 years where we're in this golden age of engineering, where it's easier to build things than ever before. And if you have previous engineering capabilities, you still have a pretty good advantage. You're able to scale, you're able to build infrastructure that is more secure, you're still able to build things really fast that work. And I want to capitalize on that as much as possible. I want to build things in the next year and a half, 2 years. Hopefully, find some financial success doing that. And then after that, I really don't know what's going to happen. There's all this craziness with AI. It is moving so very fast. I won't claim to know what will happen outside of knowing that there will be mass uncertainty with any massive new technology innovation. So what I'm personally doing is like any money I make, I'm hedging. I'm trying to get in. I'm basically trying to build a farm, build like a retreat space. I think that there's a lot to that in the future. We've talked about this in the past podcast, and something I'm really obsessed with is like what is not going to change. I don't think it'll change that people want food, shelter, and community, and so I'm indexing on those things. And the comeback to the channel is me talking basically about what I'm doing, like why I'm building, what I'm building, and then what comes next naturally is like where do I invest the my time and finances as we move into this new world. Again, it's not something like I, I I try as much as possible not to give advice that is outside of what my own experience is. But that is what's most interesting to me. Like, how do we navigate this time, a period of time where there's going to be, I think, one of the most rapid changes in human history. And I'm interested to see what I find, as I continue down this path.
Do you want to build a papaya farm or what type of farm?
Tropical fruits would be nice. You told me you grew up in Costa Rica. That's a place I was actually looking at. From a
Oh,
geographic and climate perspective, it's quite good. I'm also looking at like a big island of Hawaii. Hawaii is difficult from a cost perspective. There's also the active volcano on Big Island, and from a state politics perspective, it's kind of difficult to like do stuff on Oahu to like build things. A lot of the housing and stuff is unpermitted, and those types of things. And if you have businesses, they're not necessarily legally run. I spent the last 5 years there. My family's from Oahu, so or grew up on Oahu, so there's different considerations. I'm still figuring out the where. But I mean, important things are generally like having a freshwater source. I'm not going to go full doomer, but I would love to have the ability to also go off the grid if I could. And my vision is to have a community of like-minded people. Hopefully, raise our kids together. That is actually like a big, like a big kind of looming thing over me. Is like we're starting to my fiance and I are starting to do some family planning, and like what type of world do we want to raise our kids in. I think technology, particularly like cell phone use, social media, it's like disastrous for kids that are developing. And how do we integrate that, or even remove it, or like make it not a non-factor in a community that we build? To me is a really important question. Like I know how I am now with social media. Like I couldn't even imagine getting access to this when I was younger. Like I got a smartphone, I think the first one was like in college, right? My brain was largely developed. I see how much it like captures my attention now. Like what was it doing to our children? So a little sidebar there, but that is also a large part of the vision that I see for my future.
Yeah, so I think your vision kind of um, is influenced a lot by the stage of life you're at. I guess getting ready to have a
Yep.
family, it makes sense you want to be in a nice environment, settled down, maybe like control over who I guess is in your community. So a farm might be a good answer for that. Uh, but I guess yeah, because like even I find myself I'm a bit younger. I don't have a family, so I'm still drawn to a city. So I want to be around a lot of people. Um, and even with AI, that's not changing, but I could see that changing when I do have a family. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely very shaped by who I am in life right now. I mean, there was also a time when I was in my, my, what was it, my mid 20s, even late 20s, where where I lived in a city. I lived in Chicago for 5 years. I loved the convenience. I loved the social aspect of it. And that for me did change. Some people, it never changes. But I think the sort of like personal philosophy, the speed that technology is evolving, like I know I can't keep up. Like I don't know how some of these YouTubers do it, where they're making content about every AI advancement that's coming out. It blows my mind because I mean, where's it all gonna go? It's only gonna get faster and faster and faster, unless like some law of physics is broken. So yeah, I mean that's kind of I'll take my tinfoil hat off, but that's where my head's at.
Yeah, I think my general understanding of tech too is like uh, the younger you are, like you do kind of have a shelf life in tech. I guess like you get to a point where you can't keep adapting so well to the new technologies, and that becomes a consideration. Like, how do you pivot when you can't maybe compete with the people who grew up with AI, and like that's their baseline. Like for me, I grew up with a computer, so yeah, people who learned about computers in their 50s will have a hard time like learning the same technology as me. So that's another consideration too, I guess.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
But so you also have a book that you just wrote, which is this your first book?
It is my first book. Yes,
Congratulations. That's a big
thank you, thank you.
accomplishment, to write a book. I guess like what was the process like for you to write a book? Did you did you start like did you take like an iterative approach where you kind of posted some articles first and then like saw articles that got traction and combined them into a book? Or did you just decide, hey, I want to write a book and this is what it's going to be about? And you kind of just did it from scratch?
So kind of neither of those. Oh, a little closer to the second one, but so I have a podcast, The Exponential Athlete, right? And on that, I study the greatest athletes of all time. I get to interview a bunch of really cool coaches and athletes and people around what they believe makes the greatest athletes great. And I had the privilege of interviewing this guy, Bob Bowman, who is Michael Phelps's coach. And during our interview, he was telling me a lot about the visualization techniques that Michael Phelps used. So he would do this thing, it's kind of like if then planning. So he would visualize things going wrong in his races and then visualize himself essentially overcoming those obstacles. Like the most famous one is he would practice and visualize himself, his goggles filling up with water. And then it actually happened in one of the Olympic finals, and he still won the race because he reverted to counting his strokes and he has that mental process ingrained. And I started looking and trying to find books on visualization, trying to understand the science a little bit better. And really, there weren't any books that I really found that scratched the itch that I had. A lot of them were focused on manifestation of like, hey, if you just believe it enough, it'll happen, and you have it is very woo woo for me. And there actually is a time and a place for manifestation, but what the immediate science says is essentially if you visualize the outcome and that's all you focus on, you essentially lose motivation to pursue that outcome because our brain is so magical. It really doesn't uh, super effectively distinguish reality from what is vividly imagined in our mind. So if you visualize yourself, having a beautiful wife and the perfect family every morning, it's kind of like you already have it. Why would you be motivated to go pursue that if you feel like you already have it and you're tricking yourself into that? There are totally good use cases to visualize those outcomes. Let's say like you're about to give a presentation like 15 minutes before. You should visualize yourself successfully doing it, getting the applause, all that stuff, because that changes your confidence and your self-efficacy belief and those types of things. But largely, like there's nuance to this visualization thing. It's not just about about believing and seeing the best possible outcome. So I started looking into the scientific research. What I found is there's this treasure trove of research on guided imagery, visualization, motor imagery that's out there specifically on athletes. It's like a very widely researched area. And so I was like, oh, there's all this information. There's no way to get it into the hands of athletes currently. Why don't I just write a book on it? Like I read 150, 200 different research papers. I consolidated that into something that's useful. I did use some AI to help me like write and revise a couple of the sections. And yeah, I produced this book that is essentially a handbook for how to use visualization effectively, targeted towards athletes. Really, anyone could use it. I give the speaker example. Like that's a really good use case. Like, if you're going to give a speech, every time you rehearse it, you're actually visualizing yourself do it, right? Or you're visualizing any aspect of it. Even if you look in the past and you think about a good experience you had where you were successful at achieving something in the past, that's also a form of visualization. So to me, it was one of these things where like, okay, this does not exist in the world. I really want it to exist. I have the tools to do this. Why wouldn't I just write it? And so I produced it. Very luckily, it's been doing quite well. I think it was the number one new book in sports performance over the last couple of weeks that it's been out. I've gotten really good feedback and reviews, and so yeah, I don't know if I'll write another one, but it was one of these where it was just like, and that's kind of how I am. I'm a little impulsive sometimes. I was like, look, like this doesn't exist in the world. I want it to exist in the world. Why not me? Why shouldn't I be the one to create that? And I think that that's also like a very good life philosophy overall. One that I have is like, it's the same one that I used with Newsletter Hero, where it's like, okay, why not me? Why shouldn't I be the one to build this thing if it's something that I want?
Yeah, I see that this book kind of relates very well to the type of data science work that you already do. I guess it relates to your podcast as well. So to me, it seems like this complements your brand in a nice way.
Yeah, absolutely. So my work is largely in sports analytics. We're looking at the numbers. We're trying to make predictions, and data in that space is largely diagnostic as well as predictive. There is some inferential statistics, but a lot of the time we're not we can't really get at the how or the why of performance. So you're like, okay, Kobe Bryant had a great game. You can you can see how many points he scored. You can see how he scored them, but you don't really have any insight into like the philosophy or the training or any of the other huge factors that went into him having that successful performance. So the podcast for me was, hey, what are all of the non-data factors that make a performance? How do I get really well-rounded at understanding what makes successful performance in sport or really uh, any other area of life? I mean, sports to me is just a metaphor for studying this. And it just so happened that visualization was one I was really interested in, and I wanted to understand better. I mean, you hear about it so much, particularly in sports. Like Serena Williams, Novak Djokovic, Lindsey Vonn, Conor McGregor. All these people are talking anecdotally about how they saw it happen or they used visualization, but there wasn't really anything concrete. And there's some really good scientific frameworks to to make this a like a concrete practice rather than something you just hear about people doing.
So, you mentioned something about visualization that kind of confused me because my understanding of visualization was that basically what you initially said, that you visualize what you want, your ideal scenario, and you just try to get to the point where you see that consistently, and then that helps you bring it to reality, I guess the law of attraction. But you're saying that you should also throw in there, like maybe only in certain scenarios where you want to improve your confidence, like before a performance, would you do that? And in other scenarios, you want to visualize challenges and overcoming them so you're ready when they do occur, if they do occur. Like, if this happens, then I'll do that. And like this, so that you're prepared. I guess, like, is there an overarching framework for what visualization tools you would use if you are trying to create something?
Yeah. So there's a couple different types of visualization. So the first one is cognitive visualization. So this is also kind of known as like process visualization. So let's say I wanted to get to improve my golf swing, right? I'm visualizing myself swinging the golf club. I'm visualizing the movement pattern that I want to have. I'm visualizing the impact with the ball. I'm visualizing like where the club is in space, right? That's process focus, and that's very good for improving a skill or specific ability. You would also use process focused visualization if you're like preparing for to give a talk, or like even you're preparing to do a coding interview, right? You're visualizing, okay, I might get this type of question. How would I solve this question in my mind? Like that is a type of visualization, is like like pseudo coding in your brain, right? The other type is what's a little bit misnomer, but it's motivational visualization. And that's when you're using visualization to change your psychological state or build resilience or any of those types of things. So that's what I would be describing before you're going out and like competing or giving your talk or whatever it might be. You're doing that to build your confidence, to see your success. And there is benefits to doing this, like even at the start of the day, if you want to like bring confidence into your work or bring a little extra kick of motivation. There's also some little bit of nuance where like maybe last time when the game was on the line, you missed a free throw. You can actually just go back and visualize yourself in the same scenario, but making the free throw just over and over again. Our memory is unbelievably malleable. You can effectively, if you see it enough, trick yourself into thinking that you made the free throw. Right? Like it's one of these things where we can rewrite our past, we can write our future, we can see whatever we want to see, and there are some things that we see that really benefit us. Seeing ourselves overcoming challenges is a really powerful tool, but also seeing ourselves execute, seeing ourselves like move specifically in space in a specific way. You work the same motor neurons as you do by actually doing the movement pattern. So those are largely the two buckets of visualization. Again, in the book, I go like super in depth into each of them, but that's like a kind of SparkNotes version.
Cool. So, like, I guess, like, how long would you spend for these sessions? Because, like, is there a certain period of time where you start, like, is there, like maybe after 30 minutes, like, it doesn't really impact if you go for another 10 minutes? Like, is there, a certain, threshold where you want to shoot for?
I usually visualize for about 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night. There isn't necessarily a threshold. You probably do get diminishing marginal returns. I do want to be clear. So, like, if I'm trying to get better at archery, for example, right? Me practicing archery in real life is always going to be better than visualizing it. Me visualizing is going to be better than not practicing at all. And then me visualizing and also practicing it is going to be the best overall scenario. So let's take jujitsu, for example, right? Jujitsu is very hard on the body. And so maybe I can only train 3 hours a day if I was a professional jujitsu athlete. But I could visualize for hours beyond that, visualizing the movement patterns, visualizing seeing those things. If that was your full-time job, there's probably no like upper limit to the amount that you could visualize or might want to visualize. But again, you probably will get diminishing marginal returns. You also can get better at visualizing. So the more you practice, generally the better you get. There's also a ton of nuance around like what senses you use to visualize, because visualization is, again, maybe a misnomer where you're not just seeing the experience, you're trying to live the experience as much as possible, recruiting your touch, your smell, sounds, uh, your proprioception, where you operate in space. So there's there's like a whole world you can create. You can live in your visualization world as long as you want, and it generally will benefit you as long as you're not like avoiding social interaction and normal life things.
Interesting. Yeah. There's a lot, I guess, a lot of nuance, like you said, in this topic. I feel like, yeah, it has a lot of potential. I've heard a lot of people, like really successful people, like athletes and other professionals who use visualization, and it seems like they think it's a key to their success. So I think there's definitely something there. I need to take a look at your book.
Yeah, yeah. Well, interested to hear what you think. This is what
It's
it
on
looks like for those that are.
awesome cover art. So it's on Amazon, right?
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Cool. Well, Ken, I think we're coming to time here, so let's say our goodbyes. If people want to find, I guess, maybe your book, Newsletter Hero, and maybe they just want to follow you, could you, I guess, like direct them?
Yeah, for sure. So my if you want to find me on YouTube, where I'm going to start producing content again this week, it's just my name, Ken Jee. The book is on Amazon. It's the Visualization Handbook for Elite Athletes. You don't have to be an elite athlete to view it, but the target market was elite athletes. And then if you want to reach me directly, LinkedIn is always good. Same name, Ken Jee. Just shoot me a DM. I'm a little slow to get to them, but I will get to you if you have a specific question. Don't just be like, hello, because I've gotten a lot of those and I never respond to those. So, uh, yeah, again, thank you so much for having me on. Always a pleasure to catch up with you, man.